All right, let's jump right in. We're looking at a source today with a title that is something else. We've got black hole versus NASA versus ISRO, and then a shushing face emoji and a stone head emoji. Right off the bat, it's super cryptic, a little weird, and you just have to ask, what is this even about?
And then you get to the actual content. And this is it. The entire thing. It's not an article, not a study, it's just one single lowercase letter E. That's the whole shebang. So, yeah.
So, that's the big puzzle we're going to try and solve together. What in the world does this mean? How on earth does this one little letter connect something as massive as a black hole with two of the world's biggest space agencies? And those emojis? Let's unpack it.
Okay, so your first thought, my first thought, is probably it's a typo. Simple mistake. Or, maybe it's just a meme. People spamming the letter E online, it's a thing. And honestly, it could be just that. But what if it's not? What if it's something more? A kind of code hiding in plain sight?
So let's dig into the first big possibility. The title mentions a black hole, right? So maybe E isn't just a letter from the alphabet. Maybe it's a symbol, a variable, representing one of the most powerful concepts in all of physics: energy. And if you're thinking energy, you almost have to think of this one. E equals mc squared. This is Einstein's masterpiece. And what it tells us is mind-blowing. It's not just that energy and mass are connected, it says they are, in a way, the same thing. Mass is really just energy that's been packed together incredibly tightly.
So how does that tie back to the black hole in our title? Well, think about it like this. If mass is just super concentrated energy, and a black hole is the most extreme concentration of mass we can even imagine, then it follows that a black hole is basically a zone of almost infinite energy. Suddenly, that letter E starts to look like a perfect shorthand for the physics going on inside a black hole. And just to give you a sense of the scale we're talking about, this number here, that's c, the speed of light, squared. It's this gigantic number that acts as the conversion rate between mass and energy. It means that if you could convert even something tiny, like a grain of sand, completely into energy, the power release would be absolutely unbelievable. Now imagine the mass of a whole star crushed down to a single point. That's the kind of power a black hole represents.
So, the case for E as an energy is pretty strong. But what if the lowercase e was on purpose? What if that small detail points to something even deeper? Something that takes us out of just physics and into the very language of the universe, mathematics. Let me introduce you to Euler's number, which we usually just call E. Kind of like pi, it's one of those special, irrational numbers that just goes on forever. And it might seem a little obscure, but it is everywhere. It's basically the secret sauce behind any kind of continuous, natural growth or change.
And this is where things get really wild. E isn't just for math class. It is literally built into the world around us. You can find it in the perfect spiral of a galaxy, in the way radioactive atoms decay, even in the simple curve of a rope hanging between two posts. It's like a secret number the universe uses to write its own rules.
Okay, so we've got two incredible interpretations for E. We have the capital E for the raw energy of a black hole and the lowercase e for the mathematical code of the cosmos. So where do NASA and ISRO, the Indian Space Research Organization, fit into all this? Now, the title sets it up like a fight, right? NASA versus ISRO. But really, they're not opponents. Not at all. They're just two different teams working on the same epic project, figuring out how the universe works. NASA often pushes out into the deepest parts of space, while ISRO is famous for finding incredibly smart and efficient ways to explore space and study our own planet.
And that's the key. At the end of the day, both of these amazing organizations are trying to decode the universe, a universe that runs on the laws of energy, our big E, and is written in the language of mathematics using constants like our little e. The Versus isn't about a rivalry, it's about the shared human quest for knowledge.
So let's pull all these threads together. We started with one letter, and now we've talked about astrophysics, fundamental math, and humanity's drive to explore. So what's the big picture? I think that Versus in the title is really about perspective. It's about how we try to understand huge, cosmic things like black holes. We look at them through different lenses. We use the lens of physics with our capital E. We use the lens of mathematics with our lowercase e. And yeah, we even use the lens of our modern internet culture with its shorthand and its emojis. They're all just different languages we use to try and talk about ideas that are almost too big for words. And for me, that's really the heart of it.
This whole strange little source is a fantastic reminder that sometimes the biggest, most profound truths about our universe, from the power hidden inside an atom to the code that shapes a galaxy, can be tucked away in the simplest things, even in just a single letter.
Which kind of leaves us with one last question to think about. If all of that could be unpacked from just one letter and a couple of emojis, what other incredible secrets are sitting right out in the open, just waiting for us to take a second look? We started this whole thing with E as a statement, an answer. But maybe, after all this, the best way to end it is by turning it back into a question, a symbol for everything we're starting to understand, and a perfect reminder of all the mysteries we have yet to solve. E?